Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, has resigned after it was revealed that she had received a conviction of fraud long before she became an MP, or before she became an MP. It's a very strange story, this, which I think we will try to make sense of today. It's strange for a number of reasons, chiefly, I think, because Keir Starmer knew all about this prior to becoming Prime Minister, or certainly prior to making Louise Haigh the youngest cabinet minister, or certainly the youngest woman to join the cabinet ever. And yet he has accepted her resignation. The offence is, profoundly trivial in one way, and yet enough to secure a criminal conviction, albeit one that was met with the lowest possible outcome available, a discharge. It was sufficient to secure a conviction. I'm fascinated, as you know, by footballification, by the idea that we all suffer from an inability to view politicians objectively. I don't think it's true. I don't think that the rush to defend somebody who hails from the same side as the political divide as you do is anything like as strong across the spectrum as it is on certain parts of the political spectrum. I worry increasingly that we actually end up going too far the other way. If you've spent, for example, the last 14 years, the Vox Pops up in Sheffield that you heard during Thomas's news bulletin, I thought were fascinating. Because if you've spent the last 14 years calling out the conduct of Conservative politicians, Owen Paterson's breaches of standards that they greeted by trying to rip up the rule book, the unlawful prorogation of Parliament, lying to the Queen, Boris Johnson riding roughshod over the ministerial code and then lying about it repeatedly to the House of Commons, lying about everything repeatedly all the time. You've spent 14 years calling out the single worst, certainly since 2019, the single worst period of political misconduct in living memory. Matt Hancock with the COVID handling, the cronies receiving millions and millions and millions of pounds for equipment that wasn't fit for purpose, the hotlines that allowed friends of cabinet ministers to push straight to the front of the queue for lucrative business deals in sectors of business that they'd had no previous experience in whatsoever, the moral transgressions like Jacob Rees-Mogg dancing essentially on the graves of the Grenfell dead by accusing them of lacking common sense. And none of them ever really took responsibility for any of it. If you had to pick a watchword for the last 5 years of Tory government, certainly the bit that Boris Johnson presided over, then impunity, entitlement, and never explain, never apologise would be like tattoos across the foreheads of this shower. And then the basic incompetence, Nadine Dorries not knowing how Channel 4 was funded while giving evidence to a Common Select Committee on the funding of Channel 4, just to pick a couple of very light examples. And then Kemi Badenoch revealing that she'd committed quite a serious crime when she hacked into the computer of a political rival, but it hasn't prevented her from becoming leader of the Conservative Party any more than Ian Duncan Smith having lie after lie after lie on his CV. Not just using the word economist instead of the word banker, as Rachel Reeves stands accused of doing, didn't prevent him becoming leader of the Conservative Party either. So if you have, and of course, some of us, I don't want to make this sound silly, but some of us have done well out of telling the truth about the Tories when so much of the media was telling lies or inflating their nonsense or persuading you that Liz Truss was an economic genius, that Boris Johnson was an upstanding moral man, that the Brexit that people were encouraged to vote for would actually make them better off or be good for them. So all of the media complicit in inflicting these monstrous regimes upon the country have to kind of go after Labour politicians for tiny transgressions. Like, a bit like Keir Starmer's clothes. No rules were broken. All declarations were made, but it made news for day after day after day. And if you worry about footballification, you find yourself thinking, well, I better go in hard as well. So I don't want people to think that I'm biased. You better go in hard as well. But what you look at is not the colour of the shirt that the politician is wearing. You have to look at the action that has taken place. So this is the whole point about footballification. Grant Shapps had more names than... Well, he had several names, and he lied about it. I mean, every time you open this box of frogs, it's extraordinary how many jump out. And even those of us who chronicle it for a living have forgotten some of them. So there have been no lies told in this case. You have to look at the action on the pitch. Think about it. If you're a match of the day pundit, you have to leave your loyalties at the door. You can't be like a fan on in the stands, on the terraces. So when your centre-back ploughs through their centre-forward in an industrial fashion, running the risk of breaking both his ankles, you can't shout if you're a pundit. You can't. Well, I know you can, and they always do, but we can't start shouting, nothing to see there, ref, should have gone to spec. You've got to go, that was absolutely hideous. That was a horrible foul. You know? And similarly, if your striker goes down like a ton of bricks, having not been touched at all, you can't start shouting, penalty, penalty, penalty. It's impossible when you're watching football to do this. Even the man who invented the word footballification, me, when he goes to watch his football team, Kidderminster Harriers, finds it impossible not to join. You just shout, referee, you know somewhere inside, instinctively, not even intuitively, you've seen it evidentially. You're taking a bigger dive than Tom Daly, but you shout, penalty, referee, for goodness sake, I like to shout when I'm at the football. For goodness sake, bubbling goldfish ref. What on earth are you thinking? But politics is different. So, you know, here's a little example of what I'm talking about. What do you think Nigel Farage is being asked about in this interview? What question do you think this is a response to?
You can have your fun at Sky News. We've got 100,000 members. I've got 1 million followers on TikTok. Dame Andrew Jenkins has just joined us. She's our candidate for Greater Lincolnshire. You've had your fun. I'm off for lunch. Thank you.
I'm not going to do that as a hook and tease because it is characteristically disgusting. He's being asked about one of his own MPs who has been found to have kicked 7 bells out of a woman, being locked up for it and then lied about it. I'll play you that again with the question at the top.
It involves being honest, though. Are you not concerned that he lied about what he did?
Did he? He wasn't vetted. He wasn't vetted. James McMurdoch was one of those many candidates who wasn't vetted at all with the party. Look, I didn't know any of this when I took back over as leader.
So you said you're going to put in place the most vigorous vetting system in place now. Do you think James McMurdoch would not go through this new vetting system?
You can have your fun at Sky News. We've got 100,000 members. I've got 1 million followers on TikTok. Dame Andrew Jenkins has just joined us. She's our candidate for Greater Lincolnshire. You've had your fun. I'm off for lunch. Thank you.
So that's a British party leader being asked about a member of Parliament who kicked 7 bells out of an entirely innocent woman, got locked up for it, lied about it, and of course Farage has previously said that this conviction was known about before Murdoch became a parliamentarian. I'm just using it to highlight that if that was a Labour leader, if that was Keir Starmer, I would be absolutely disgusted and outraged. I mean, to the point of apoplexy, to the point of thinking he had to go. It's absurd for Kemi Badenoch to be calling for Keir Starmer's resignation at this point in the parliamentary cycle. But if Keir Starmer had been defending a man who had beaten up a woman, been locked up for it and then lied about it before sitting next to him in the House of Commons, then I would be beside myself with disgust. I'm fairly confident that is never going to happen. So this is what I mean by footballification. Imagine that was a Labour problem or a Liberal Democrat problem or even a Tory problem, but it's Farage. So it's almost expected, isn't it, that level of moral bankruptcy. But what if it was one of your lot that had done what Louise Haigh had done? And I'm going to tell you exactly what she did. There is a possibility, and this will be an answer to one of the questions that I'm going to ask you, that there may be more to come out. But I'm not so sure about that. So here's what happened. She got mugged horribly. She went to the police. She listed of what she believed had been taken during the mugging. This included her work mobile phone. Sometime later, She says, I discovered the mobile phone in question had not actually been taken. In the interim, I'd been issued with a new work phone. She turned on the original work device. This, in some ways, not to make light of the political issue here, or the moral issue, or the police issue. In some ways, the most shocking element of this whole story is that the police investigated a stolen mobile phone, because apparently when it got turned on as a stolen device, it triggered some sort of, and we are going back to 2014 on this, but it triggered some sort of reaction. The phone registered somewhere. A stolen phone has been turned on, so a light goes on in a police station somewhere. That's almost certainly not how it works, but it's a metaphor. And therefore, the police get in contact with her or with the phone. I don't know how. The original work device being switched on triggered police attention, and I was asked to come in for questioning. My solicitor advised me not to comment during that interview, and I regret following that advice. Perhaps as a consequence of the no comment, the police referred the matter to the CPS. I appeared before Southwark Magistrates Court under the advice of my solicitor. Again, I pleaded guilty, despite the fact that it was a genuine mistake from which I did not make any gain. The advice would have been, if you plead guilty, you'll get a discharge. This is not a big deal. Well, lawyers ring in and correct me, by the way. For goodness sake, don't take my word for it. But fairly clear that the solicitor was working on the principle that if you plead guilty, you'll get a discharge and you'll be home by tea time. If you plead not guilty, it goes to trial, and it becomes a much more complicated process. The magistrates accepted all of these arguments and gave me the lowest possible outcome available, a discharge. And there it is, as it stands. Keir Starmer knew about this when she was 24 years old when this happened, and has described the experience of being mugged in 2013 as terrifying. But what she should have done, and given that Aviva is an insurance company and she was working for Aviva at the time, it perhaps puts a slightly different complexion on things. What she should have done is declare when she found her old phone that she had found her old phone. We did this once with some jewellery, actually, that we thought had been stolen, and then we found it and we sent the money back to the insurer. That's what she should have done. I don't even know if she made an insurance claim. That's why I say there may be some more stuff to come out. So the question becomes, it was before Southwark Magistrates that this occurred. I don't know why Ian is quibbling about whether or not there is a Southwark Magistrates Court. I don't know. Maybe the word court. Anyway, I'm not sure that's the issue here. So, here's what I think. It's 18 minutes after 11. I've done this once this week where I carry my introduction on after the junction. But I wanted to set the stall out completely. I wanted to remind you about what morally bankrupt politics actually sounds like. I'll give you a clue. I'm off for lunch. And then I'm going to set it up even more, because this is really important. And then I'm going to take your calls. But if you know what your answer to the question of why do you think this has happened is, what do you think has happened here? Why has somebody gone for a historical spent offence that merited only a discharge and about which her boss, her party leader, already knew? Why do you think she has gone? And do you think it is good or bad that she has? And I will answer those questions first after this.